Dr. Randall, the Soul Doctor, author of Soul Doctoring, Heal Yourself, Heal the Planet, shares her 40 years of experience as a cross-cultural practitioner, medical futurist, and expert in 20 different modalities of healing, along with amazing interviews with some of the leading minds in medicine and big thinkers in all walks of life. The stories of our lives are the woven energies of our soul's paths. They feed and ignite the spiritual light that nourishes the universal soul, the one mind, the cosmic consciousness where we all come together. This podcast is going to be a deep dive into the personal stories of people who have made significant contributions to the planet. What formed them? What moved them to become these leaders and innovators that inspire us so? Hi, Joe.
Hi, Gail. Dr. Randall. Hello.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to have Joe Weiss on our Soul Stories podcast today. We were just discussing before we came on the recording how much different sort of diverse experiences we both have, all the way from ballet to martial arts, which led you specifically into Japanese Reiki, which is another type of martial art in a way, isn't it?
True. Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Joe, he starts his story as an aerospace engineer. He was an aerospace engineer for 42 years.
Still am.
Still and still is. Okay. Where I say I've been 40 years in Western medicine, but still am. But then have done many other types of medicine, maybe 20 different modalities,
Really
which I
something.
I covered that. I cover that in my book, Soul Doctoring, Heal Yourself, Heal the Planet, mostly through the experiences of my patients when they talk about their own self-healing and what they got from that, and the importance of self-healing. Self-healing is a big thing right now, and I mean, I think it's a big thing, and I think that the powers that be comes from our root cause, our root people might agree with us on that.
I agree completely with you. I am finding in my energy work practice that belief and the involvement of the person receiving is really important and a very big factor. So I'm on the
Mhm.
same page with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, and why do you think that is? Why is self-healing such a big, I mean, I can give you my opinion, but I know my opinion, so I'd like to hear yours.
Well, maybe after, because I'd be very interested to hear your opinion. My feeling is that belief is part of an energetic component. It's an energetic component. And that energy that we use to heal is enhanced, increased. Flow happens through belief and attitude. And I have seen a few significant examples on both sides where someone who believed a negative outcome helped in a way advance a negative outcome. I can't promise that every positive belief will result in a positive outcome, but it feels to me like it contributes.
Mhm. Mhm. So how do you believe, or how do you see self-healing being so important now? How do you think that came about, and what are some
Good,
of the factors?
good question. I think it's coming about uh, kind of piecemeal because uh, Western medicine and science made such great leaps um, over the last few hundred years, and more recently, of course. And you have been a practitioner, and you know the advances made. But I think they also have tended to dominate. And so there are other aspects of healing that happen that haven't gotten as much attention and acceptance. And
Mm-hmm.
Western medicine can't be beat in the world of acute treatment. Boy, the advances made. But I
Mm-hmm.
think there are other dimensions, and we've kind of not paid much attention to them because of the advances we've seen on the other side of practice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, as people say, but that we were taught in medical school that science became the altar from which we were to draw our
Yeah.
medicine, if you will, or
Yes.
even our
Yes.
spiritual practice, and
Yeah.
yeah, and then at least me being the way I am and being interested in more spiritual, emotional things, and finding that really truly does help my patients a lot, and has over the years, that, like, just as you said, there's so much more to it. So,
Yeah.
I became the doctor, the scientist that was invited on these shows, these wackadoo kind of shows where people were also seeing ghosts, or people were also you know um, being struck by lightning and then turning into healers or something, like
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy. People
You
might
were the
think
science
crazy
guy.
stuff. I was the science slash you know, outside the box thinker,
You a
and I
bridge.
used the words. I thank you. I used the words integrative medicine on national television for the first time
It's
that I
fantastic.
know of. Yeah, me
That is
and
so great.
who was the vice president that said he invented the internet or something? Al Gore, something like that. But it was and but I think it was important. I think it was important for people to hear a scientist,
Absolutely.
academician, professor from UCLA say the S word, and I don't mean in a bad
Yes.
way, I mean in a spiritual way, and
Uh,
that bring as a matter of fact, Hippocrates was the first, wasn't he, to clear back when to return spirit to the body was a big thing,
Interesting.
and then we
I
moved away from that with Descartes and all that other stuff, and then, like I said, science became the altar from which we drew our medicine from,
Yes.
and then we came back.
Yes, and I
And
think
it's
you're
when we came
absolutely
back.
right. You're absolutely right in and a great example of bridging the two ideas,
Mhm.
bringing them back together. I have
Yeah.
a less visible similarity in that as I'm still an engineer at work, I'm working with engineers, and to the to those receptive, I can mention energy healing and what goes on with that.
Mhm.
And the fact that I don't appear to be a loony and I work with them in applied science, just as you presented a face of science and spirituality, I don't get into the spirituality aspect quite yet because, baby steps. But it's a similar kind of situation, I think.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I'll tell you, it was that pathway, though, that drew me to, and this was very early on, to indigenous medicines, and those are some of the 20 modalities I speak of, because when you really delve deep into indigenous type medicines, and I don't mean just our American Indian, but South American, Central American, African, you name it, in almost all of those kind of medicines, you'll find a lot of similarities. And if we look back and learn the similarities, like, for instance, the Navajo medicine wheel is almost
Mhm.
identical to the Tibetan mandalas.
Yeah.
Like, who would have thought that, And that, that this indigenous medicine is really the root of what's gonna end up saving our planet, which is regeneration.
Sounds
Because they are the
sounds
original regenerators, when it comes to farming and
yeah.
eating and lifestyle, and community, and
Yes,
togetherness and blue zones. I mean, they were the original. So a lot of this comes out in my book called Soul Doctoring: Heal Yourself, Heal the Planet, because it
great.
is it is the combination of those types of medicine and what you're doing too, the Reiki and the energy healing. Because in the beginning, we were just considered a little bit wacky, or what was the word that they used for us?
Hmm. Out there,
You I mean, chiropractors were even considered,
I
you know,
remember that. Uh, my
not
parents,
real doctors.
it's very interesting. My parents were very much at the altar of Western medicine, as you've described it. My father was a dentist, and they were very much in that frame of mind. And I recall that they thought chiropractors were not really doctors, they were kind of quacks early
Quacks,
on.
that's the word.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I myself experienced the benefits of chiropractic that, one could start to kind of have a contrary picture as to what they learned from their parents.
Yeah,
So,
quackism.
yeah, yes,
So, actually, just to digress back a little bit with your history, you discovered energy, um, healing intuitively, you say?
yes, yes. So, what had occurred was um, I developed a very minor skin growth, uh, went to the dermatologist who prescribed a cream to try on it, and went back 3 weeks later. It hadn't improved. He gave me a
Mhm.
different cream to try. 3 weeks later, it had not improved again. And he said, well, come back in another 3 weeks. Don't use any of the creams. And if it's still there, I'll just excise it. And I said, fine. And went away. And at some point, I can't tell you why exactly, I was looking at it and decided to put my fingers on it and breathe prana into it. I'd studied some yoga and
Mhm.
thought of prana, and I don't know why I thought to do that, but I did. And after a couple of minutes, the engineer in me was thinking, it feels like my fingers are getting warm. Is that just an illusion? And, I tested against cheeks, and they were truly
Mhm.
getting warm. And the bottom line was 3 weeks later, when I went back after doing that, whenever I would think of it, I'd think of it, and for a couple of minutes, I'd envision running prana threw my fingers into it. 3 weeks later, it was
Mhm.
half the size when I went back. And the doctor said, oh, looks like it's going away. That's great. And I did not tell him I was running prana into it.
Mhm.
But he said, continues on, fabulous. And so I continued doing that. And after another 3 weeks, it was gone. And this was
Mhm.
fascinating to me. I didn't know anything about energy healing, I'd never heard of it. But I'd ask my wife and friends if they had a muscle pain or something, could I put my hand on it? And I would do that same thing, run prana, and generally they would feel better. And that's what led
Mhm.
to Reiki. My sister in law, had heard of Reiki and told me about it.
Nice. Where do you live?
I live in Valley Village, I think not too far from where you are. That's North Hollywood,
Not you.
basically, in the San Fernando.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So, how if someone wanted to have your prana run through them, how would they do that?
How could they find me? Did you
Yeah,
ask?
exactly. I
Oh,
did. I
well, I
asked it in an
actually.
interesting way because
Oh,
yeah, because because
interesting
I
is
I
good.
was I
Um,
was I was recently in a car accident. I call it
oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, I call it the irresistible force met the immovable object because, I went up Canaan after a rain and the boulders came down. and hit the side of my
Yeah.
car and drove my car into the mountain, basically.
Oh my.
And yeah, I'm still suffering from some, well, I guess pain, injury from that, and just looking
Well,
for
I'm
different
sorry.
healers to help me out.
I'd be glad to give it a try. I actually have a space in a metaphysical store that three of us own. Or
Mm-hmm.
I actually have been doing, since the pandemic, as a lot of us have, been doing a fair amount of distance healing work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be happy to try to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That'd be great.
Do you do any home visits, or has COVID sort of shut you down in that regard?
It did, but I think now being boosted and vaccinated and boosted, and still masking where appropriate, I'm much more open to visits. So maybe we can work
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Okay, so you got a positive result when you did it on yourself, and then you must have taken that to other people as well. You said your friends, your family,
Yeah,
and maybe
I
some
did.
clients.
Exactly. And as things developed, I went through the Reiki attunements with a great Reiki master. And
Mhm.
in 2012, I became acquainted with Rosalind Bruyere, who I believe you
Mhm.
may know. You and she, I
Yes,
think.
I met her. I met her, yeah, sort of peripherally because I worked with Valerie Hunt
Yes,
at UCLA, and
as
she's
did
she
she.
was amazing. She's a professor emeritus, I think in some sort of physiology or something, but we had a very good time measuring uh, healers' auras, and she was one of the ones that we did.
Yes, yes, she is. She has mentioned that in class about the work she did with Valerie, and it was fascinating. Her involvement also included reading auras, and that was correlated
Mhm.
against measurements being taken that you all were taking at the same time, and relating the two. And it sounds like just fascinating stuff. Um, I met her in
Yes. Mhm.
2012 and have studied with her really since. She's an amazing healer,
Mhm.
needless to say. And so that shifted me a little bit in healing style, you could say. So clearly Reiki is moving energy. What Rosalind teaches is moving energy, but almost from a slightly different philosophical point of view. It was the first time I'd been exposed to the idea of running energy with a purpose, and
Hmm.
very careful to delineate between intention and a purpose. Uh, and this was something new to me from my Reiki experience, where we are taught it goes where it needs to go. Don't essentially try to do anything with it. That was pretty
Mhm.
fascinating to me as the engineer, and kind of mind blowing too. Um,
Mhm.
and as I learned about her practice over years and the success she had had, this was kind of a new realm to me. So I definitely took up study with her, and that's been wonderful.
So tell me more about that intention versus purpose, because I've worked with a lot of healers, and we're taught to step out of the way, if you will, and
Yes,
just be the instrument.
yes,
And is that something like what you've been taught as well, or?
yes, it is, and I have to revise a little bit what I said. Where yes, there was a purpose, but it was a blend of purpose and not purpose. It's very interesting. It sounds almost Zen like, I suppose. While while having a purpose, not forcing a an action. So,
Mhm.
and I hope I will speak correctly for Rosalind, but as I understand the way we work, we're following where the
Mhm.
energy is going, the patient, the
Mhm.
receiving party, is giving the idea of what is needed, but then at the same
Mhm.
time, we are finding that need and working with that need and supplying the right component of energy or components of energy that will be most beneficial. So I don't know if I'm doing a great job of describing. So there's this direction while listening for direction that happens, and that took me a
Uh-huh.
while to get to kind of adapt to that idea. It was a little bit
Mhm.
different than the Reiki training.
Mhm. So the Reiki would be more, would you say, would be more impartial, or in the,
I would, and nothing
or
wrong
my,
with it. It's clearly very
no.
powerful and beneficial. It's
Mhm.
I would almost describe it as a less personal interaction in a way. You said it well, impartial,
I see.
uh,
Mhm.
neutral, um, and at the same time, I believe what Rosalind is teaching is neutrality, but then direction, and it's actually part of what we've also learned in her classes. They do tend to vary between healing technique and spirituality, and so this is a part
Mhm.
of a spiritual aspect, I believe. The
Mhm.
working together of two souls entities uh, in a coordinated way. Uh,
Mhm.
if we use our left brain to try to do that, we get in the way, as you said. We will get in the way.
Mhm.
Uh, it's almost as if it's on the periphery and helping, but not doing.
Mhm.
I'm I'm
Mhm.
I'm a set of verbal contradictions here.
No, no, I love that, being and not doing. I mean, I've spent hours with my consciousness guild discussing being and not doing, or doing and not being, or but I've also studied pranic healing. Are you
Yeah,
familiar with that? Yeah,
I'm not
Master.
very familiar with it. I know of the modality.
Well, Master Ko and Master Cho, who preceded uh, Master Ko, I believe he was the older master. And it's also, so they have these mandalas, if you will, but also color. And I was also very interested in color healing. And then I studied Vicky Wall and her whole
Mhm.
discipline of Arasoma.
Oh, I'm not
And
familiar with that one.
oh, you should read
I'll
about it.
look
It's
it up.
very fascinating. I think there are more now, but when I studied it was between 98 and 100 and something different color, uh, biphasic bottles and different ways that they came, but it involves um, not just color, but gemstones
Mm,
and flower essences. So the highest
sure.
vibration types of healing that you can possibly imagine, applied through the hands and through intention. So there you go
Oh,
again.
great.
Yeah, so through intention and through the hands, and for either cleansing or um, actually giving color as an antidote or a treatment, depending on what the emotional, physical, and this came through my indigenous medicine training too. So it's either mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual.
Right.
So, and that's like the medicine wheel, right? And
Yes,
then
it
a
is.
color may come with that, and and then it also involves aura. So a person may come in and, okay, choose 8 of these, and you choose it, and it gives you a reading on
Oh,
top of
yeah.
that. So it's pretty fascinating, the
Sounds
whole
fascinating.
mixture. But the
And
color, and I'm very attuned to color. I'm very attuned to
ah,
color, and and then the martial arts has given me the very grateful to the martial arts of giving me the ability to apply energy, if you will.
Mm, sure. It's
Mhm.
very energy based, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. That's fascinating, and um, not familiar with those modalities, but as you describe them, uh, and over time, I've really come to appreciate just how many forms energy healing takes.
Your
Um,
dog likes it.
yeah, the dogs love it. Must be the mail
Yeah.
carrier. Sorry. Um, Corgis are very territorial. Um, so, anyways, um, but what you are describing for me is yet another energetic approach, uh, and
Mhm.
I think it's the situation where we can only be benefited by any variations because being the variable machines we all are, something may work where something else doesn't, and to have a number
Mhm.
of tools available can only be helpful. So that's great.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I love it, and I've always loved, aromatherapy as well, and but then then I met when aromatherapy met color therapy, I'm like, "Wow, this is something,"
Oh yeah,
this is really amazing, yeah,
isn't it?
so
Yeah, I'm as time goes on, it's one of those situations where the more you know, the less you know. The wide
Right.
range of everything that comes into play is just more and more fascinating. So
Mhm.
absolutely great.
Yeah, and I did, acupuncture, and I was criticized in the beginning because I would call it Oriental, and then people would
Mm,
say, "Well, are you traditional Chinese, or are you Jap, or what are you?" And I said, "Well, what if you've learned both? What do you call that?" So and there is a different energy in Chinese, which is more blood level, and Japanese, which is more, energy level. And
I'm sure.
even though, like, I've done Japanese acupuncture on some of my Chinese acupuncture patients, and they went,
Really
"Oh my god, you went so deep that time." When actually
interesting.
it's the opposite, it's, not
It's
deep.
fascinating.
We use gold instead of, metal, or, we use precious metals instead of,
Yeah,
steel, and instead of deep penetration, sometimes we don't even penetrate at all, but just touch the
interesting.
points and apply the energy. I would say, the energy very similar to Reiki energy.
Sure, sure. Which is, yeah, different flavor, but a flavor of energy certainly. Um, I
Mhm.
was going through one of my older books. It was very interesting. You brought up acupuncture, acupressure, Reiki. Are you familiar with Lynn McTaggart, The Field? It's written in
No,
the
is that a
early
book?
2000s, I believe. Um,
Uh-huh.
she writes about how physicists were beginning to discover the field, the energy aspects, some of which we're touching on here, and she refers to measurements that were done for skin resistance levels and how acupuncture points have a much different resistance than the areas right next to them. And so
Mhm.
interesting that you had seen the experience of even just making a contact with those points and having energy flow.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely, and I think there's even been studies based on that, where they've, um, done placebo points right
Mm,
next to, yeah,
right.
yeah,
And they
but
and
then
they
ag
wouldn't work probably,
well,
or did they?
or it. Well, they work differently than what you would have thought, but then, of course, then there's the quantum theory, and you would probably know a lot more about this than me, but where scientists would look at atoms and whatever they expected from that atom
Yes,
might be what they get, as opposed to, you know, what it is it being or doing? I don't know.
exactly. That was the conundrum of quantum, right? And
Yeah.
interestingly, this book, The Field, jumps into that. And from the bigger topic of the field, it's actually a an alternative explanation compared to quantum physics. Uh, Quantum physics, as you were saying, seemed, Einstein called that spooky action at a distance. Uh, he said, he said, I don't think God plays dice, where you don't know what the outcome is until you decide what the outcome is, or it could be one thing, it
Mhm.
could be another thing. Very interesting work done in this alternative explanation that McTaggart talks about in The Field. You might be interested to check
Yeah.
that out.
So I love all that stuff. So where is Rosalind now?
She's in Sierra Madre. She's still up there. She teaches since COVID. She's been teaching, on the web, on the net. Might resume teaching in person again soon, I think.
Mhm.
But she's up there. I don't
Mhm.
know that she does a full practice anymore.
Where is that exactly?
Sierra Madre is north and east of Pasadena.
I
It's up in
see.
the foothills there, or up in the
Mhm.
mountains.
Nice. So, also, you have an association with Huntington. Is it with
Yes,
the hospital per se, or
with the
with
hospital. Yeah,
tell me
actually,
about
with the
that.
hospital. Yeah, they they pride themselves on being one of the centers of integrative medicine. Thank you for bringing in integrative medicine forward. They practice aspects of it there, and included in that are Reiki practitioners, of which I am one. And we actually do visits to patients. It's through the volunteer office, but they can request a session. And so there's a few of us doing that. And in fact, I'm glad you brought it up because it's one of my goals, a bigger passion these days to get more of that happening. Your experience
Mhm.
might be similar to mine, where I've now been volunteering there 4 years, and it's great. But I can tell that while you and I appreciate the benefits, I think a lot of Western medicine doesn't. And so while they tolerate Reiki practitioners, music therapy, pet therapy, these are still basically Western medicine, Western science based institutions and treatment modalities, which
Mhm.
that's how it works. So, um, and what I've come to feel is that one of the problems in getting energy therapy more accepted is it's difficult to test. It doesn't test well the way other modalities, other allopathic approaches do. As an engineer, what I see is that in doing for example, a drug trial, companies, researchers are able to isolate uh, variables. So they will control for groups, they will control for a lot of inputs so that they can get a pure effect of what the drug is and is doing. Energy therapy doesn't work so well that way because I think there are so many variables that Western science and medicine doesn't even consider variable. The day of the week, the particular healer, the particular patient, the phase of the moon. the just how the energy is flowing for the healer that day. I think so many more variables come into play that aren't controllable and not even thought of as being something to control, that is why we tend to fail to make an impression and to be able to show consistent benefit to Western medicine. So my plan, which we have put into effect at Huntington, is to uh, one way to overcome this is to generate enough results that statistically you might wonder what was happening. So if I can get 30,000 patients treated at Huntington over time, and Huntington finds they're using 10% less pain med, and patients with the same maladies are being discharged 2 days earlier, the type of statistics buildup that can lead to the correlation between what are we doing that is creating this effect and the effect. Since we can't test it the way we do with, say, a new drug trial. So to me, the key is to get enough sample size, enough population to be able to show an effect. Well, now we start stepping back, which is, I need lots more sessions with lots more patients to do that, but they have to ask for it. It's almost a catch-22. Unless you know it works, would you ask for it? And so my backdoor way into this was something we call the 2-minute clinic. The head of volunteers at Huntington came up with that title. I thought it was brilliant. And what it is to get more treatments to patients, I'm trying to raise the awareness of energy therapy with the staff. And not necessarily MDs, although a couple of the physicians have given it a try, but especially the nurses and patient advocates. And I feel if we can make them a little more aware of what's going on with this, they will be the ones recommending the patients give it a try. The curveball in there is that staff doesn't have a lot of time. They can't sit for a half-hour session or come to, a room at the hospital to do that. And what the 2-minute clinic is a treatment that Rosalind has taught us called brain balancing. You may be familiar with it. And it's simply running energy back and forth across someone's head. And it tends to be very relaxing. It tends to ground. It tends to even people out. And you can do it in 2 minutes. And so what we've taken up is going to the workstations and offering, hey, you got 2 minutes? You're probably pretty stressed. It's a tough job. Take a 2-minute breather here. And we started doing this in October, and it's a slow process, I think, but I'm very much fascinated by how receptive the RNs and staff and even the few physicians have been after just this 2-minute session. It's really been an interesting process, and I'm hoping that after enough of that, we'll start getting more referrals to patients, build up that sample size, and get a little more practice in the hospitals happening.
Well, I can't tell you how much that reminds me of my indigenous friends, because I know this man pretty well. His name's Louis Mel Madrona, and actually he helped me out. It was like in 2007, when at that time I was going around the country giving talks on the science behind mind-body medicine. Kind of like the being and the flowing and the whole thing like that, but actually talking about science, because he was one of the few that had done real science, with American Indian medicine, like in emergency rooms and things like that. And then did something like what you're saying, if you have a large enough sample size that shows when you,
Mm.
and we did this at UCLA, but it was much smaller, where we applied other types of disciplines. We had Ayurvedic, Chinese, Japanese, and what did I say? Did I say Ayurvedic, Chinese, American Indian? And then we would give our patients a choice as to what they wanted to add to the Western medicine to
Mm.
see if it would improve them. And if in all
Nice.
cases it did, so I don't know if that's much of a
Wonderful.
surprise, but it wasn't to us, but it was a surprise to others, and the it was impressive to it was a photo documentary. So that reminded me of what you said, and then in addition to
Interesting.
that, we found that they needed less of the Western medicine type stuff. They needed less pain meds.
Sure.
It was a
Sure.
gastroenterology clinic, so they needed less steroids. They needed less things like that, that were very intense Western medicine drugs.
Fascinating.
And
When was that done?
that was in the late 80s,
Ah,
late
wow.
80s. And then we went on with that and did, but it was a separate thing. We did consensus conferences with different types of modalities, and we did a whole thing in Sedona. Anyway, it was with Emmer Meyer too, but that's an aside. But then I wanted to move into this other point because it reminded me of your segue where we the backdoor way where you said, well, let's get staff to see if they'll give us the 2-minute doorway, right?
Yeah.
And so what natives do, and they do this naturally. They do this as part of their community. As a matter of fact,
Mm.
they're in the process right now of eliminating the word waiting room because people are just allowed to show up when they want to, when they need to. They show up, they talk with each other, they share with each other in terms of what's going on with them medically, and it changes their awareness of
Mm.
what maybe they need to do or maybe what they need to ask for. So it
Interesting.
reminded me of your 2-minute doorway thing.
Yeah. No, I
So
think it hits.
it's a very indigenous way of doing things is what
Ah,
I'm trying to
I
point
see.
out.
Oh, that's interesting. I, of course, didn't know that. I did have a wonderful experience in 2019, summer of 2019, going up to Canada to work with an Ojibwe medicine camp up there uh,
Uh-huh.
through a fellow student of Rosalind's. Uh, Not exactly that same experience, but very interesting. Uh, just interesting in terms of what you've been describing in how indigenous peoples have been using energy healing forever, right? Um, and here
Mhm.
was another example. Very interesting. Your mode of dis. I don't know exactly how that struck me. It's a humanistic approach, certainly, and maybe
Mhm.
that's part of loosening the the constrictions. Maybe that's a great you know uh, flow enhancer.
Mhm. Mhm.
Very fascinating.
Yeah, I actually dedicated my book to the native people because I they probably did more for me in terms of um my flow, if you will, or moving me along in terms of compelling me more towards my soul path than
Wonderful.
almost any other modality, and I wanted to thank them and be grateful for them.
That's fabulous. And it sounds to me like you are finding, as I am, that things happen to send you along your path that when you think back on it, it's fascinating to think, interesting how that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting how that influence came in. Uh, and
Yeah.
of all the
Well, actually,
possibilities
it
that
was yeah, it was through a Sundance ceremony that I was invited to participate in that I received the vision to, um, well, the vision. If you ever looked at the front of my book, you should look at it on Amazon. It's basically me receiving the planet like this,
I
and then
noticed that.
hugging her.
Yes,
And then if you read the meaning of the vision, it was basically to, how to act as a bridge, which you picked up on during this conversation, a bridge between different types of medicines, but also through that, which I look at as self-healing, to heal the planet.
sure.
So
It
so
makes sense.
once we become aware of those connections, like in integrative medicine or functional medicine, or Reiki or any of these other types of medicines, it makes us more aware of what we can do to heal the planet.
Oh, I think you're so right. We're on the same page there. And the right might not be the correct word. A good place to start from, right? The
You'd be right on.
right on, the right on place to start from.
Yeah.
Um, Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Hmm. Well, this has just been a delightful conversation for us, for
Yes,
me
thank you
anyway.
so much again for inviting me to talk with you. It's been grand.
Yeah. So tell us again how we can reach you, how people can benefit from your wisdom, uh, the Joe Weiss pearls, and how do
Um,
we?
I can be reached through the Green Man Store, which is our metaphysical shop. It's in North Hollywood, and has a easily found presence on the web. And being one of the owners, they're forced to know who I am. But I can always be reached through there, and look forward to all kinds of discussion and throwing pearls wherever I can.
And so they reach you through there, but also can they reach you through the Huntington Memorial?
They can, although, being the hospital, they tend to be, uh, how to put it exactly, they essentially, we are like unpaid staff. We pretty much are. The whole volunteer group there are like unpaid
Mhm.
staff. And patients are invited to contact the volunteer office if they want to see if a practitioner has an outside practice. But other than that, I don't know if they would tell you much. It would be like
Mhm.
protecting their employees. But again, through the Green Man, I can certainly be.
Uh-huh. Great. Okay. And did you have a phone number, a website for that?
Yes. So the website is thegreenmanstore.com. And the phone number is, let me see, 818-985-2010.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, let's stay in touch. This is good stuff.
absolutely. It's been a great pleasure. And let's keep in touch.
Definitely. Okay.
All
I
right.
might just take you up on that home visit.
Absolutely. Let me know.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You got my numbers. Okay.
Yes, I do.
Bye. Okay. So I'm going to say goodbye now, and I love you, and I'm going to talk to you just 1 second more. This is Dr. Gail Randall from Soul Stories, and author of Soul Doctoring, Heal Yourself, Heal the Planet. I want to thank Saltology, our sponsor, at bathsalt.com, which fits perfectly into my medicine bag as it, like me, calls upon the ancient wisdom and modern technology to heal, especially with the stresses and ills of our modern times. The Bokek brand uses organic salts combined with organic essential oils sourced from ancient Egypt to provide a perfect remedy for your bathing ritual and healing from modern stresses. The Relief RX brand is a unique one-of-a-kind healing salt that uses organic CBD, treated with a unique emulsification process to create nanoparticles which easily enter the skin to most effectively heal and relieve aching muscles and joints. Whether from chronic inflammation or just a rough workout, this is the perfect healing bath, especially when you add the organic essential oils of neroli, lavender, eucalyptus, or grapefruit. Your body, mind, and soul will be lifted and soothed like never before. Go now to bathsalt.com. I also want to give special thanks to Larry Antonino and Agora Borealis Recording Studio for music and score, and also to closetotheearth.com for IT and computer assistance. I'm Dr. Gail Randall, creator and host of Soul Stories. I just want to thank you for listening to my podcast. I recently got a notification from the International Podcast People, and I was astounded that so many countries are listening to my podcast in the category of alternative health. So thank you, and please continue to listen. I especially want to thank Egypt, Croatia, Japan, and Switzerland, also France and Ireland, because my numbers were quite high there. So keep up the good work and check out my Instagram at Dr. Gail Randall, and particularly check out my Instagram TV, where you can hear me talking about alternative medicine subjects and also see me. It's a very good show, and I think you'll like the subjects. It's on 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every Friday, but it's recorded there, so you can find it there anytime you look. Okay, thanks again. I love you guys. Also supported by Randall Wellness Network, bringing health and wellness to you directly. Medical futurist Dr. Gail Madeleine Randall brings 40-plus years as one of America's most forward-thinking doctors, healers, and emerging authors onto a diverse media platform to empower our paths to health, wellness, increased consciousness, and vitality. Gail Madeleine Randall, MD, has long practiced, taught, and encouraged patients to take control of their healing processes and journeys. Randall Wellness Network provides a 360-degree platform for people to heal themselves, and she most emphasizes regenerative approaches for healing individuals, communities, and the planet as one. For more information, go to drgmrandall.com and Instagram at drgailrandall, and check out the robust Instagram series on Instagram TV, also Facebook, Randall Wellness, and also Dr. Gail Randall.